The story begins not with an announcement, but with whispers. In the heart of Zimbabwe, a train runs unlike any other in the world. A train that does not depend on coal, diesel, or even external electricity. It is powered entirely by radio frequencies, self-sustaining and infinite. And it was created by one man, Maxwell Sangulani Chikumbutso. For months, the world has been buzzing about his invention. But behind the scenes, something unusual was unfolding. Elon Musk's team, the very people shaping the future of Tesla, SpaceX, and global energy, quietly landed in Zimbabwe. No press releases, no public statements, no flashing lights. This was not a visit for show. It was a mission of curiosity, maybe even concern. Because if Chikumbutso's RF-powered train is real, it could upend everything. The future of energy, transport, and even space travel could shift in an instant. The team's arrival was discreet. Private jets touched down at Robert Gabriel Mugabe International Airport under the cover of night. Security was tight, details were sparse, and only a few insiders even knew they were there. Officially, they were there for regional innovation meetings. Unofficially, they were heading straight to see the train. Locals whispered that billionaires don't fly halfway across the world for casual visits. Something about this train had shaken the very core of Silicon Valley. The convoy of black SUVs drove quietly through Harare. The streets were dimly lit, filled with ordinary life continuing as usual. But inside those vehicles sat some of the most brilliant engineers on Earth. They stared out of tinted windows, wondering if what they were about to witness was real or an elaborate illusion. The train awaited them at a private station outside the city. It stood there like a sleeping giant, its metallic body gleaming under floodlights. No cables above it, no fuel tanks nearby, no obvious source of power. It was silent, almost too silent, as if daring the visitors to doubt it. Maxwell himself was waiting. Not dressed in a suit, not surrounded by bodyguards, but calm and confident. He welcomed the team personally, shaking hands, his eyes steady, his demeanor unshaken. For him, this was not a competition. It was destiny. He led them toward the train, explaining in simple words what others had called impossible. Energy is everywhere, he said. You just need to know how to capture it. The Musk engineers followed closely, examining every detail. They took notes, whispered to each other, and occasionally stopped to touch the train's surface as if feeling for hidden systems. Maxwell gestured to the cabin. They stepped inside. The interior was modern, glowing with subtle lights, digital displays, and futuristic panels. But the most striking detail was the silence. The train hummed softly, a heartbeat of invisible power flowing through it. One of the engineers asked the question everyone had on their minds. Where is the power source? Maxwell smiled. You were standing inside it, he replied. He explained how radio frequencies, signals all around us, unseen and constant, could be harvested, converted, and amplified. The team listened, some skeptical, some amazed. One pulled out a portable scanner, trying to detect hidden energy feeds, but there were none. The energy was coming from the very air, turned into usable electricity in real time. Finally, Maxwell gave the command. The train roared to life, not with smoke or sparks, but with quiet elegance. Its lights brightened, the engines engaged, and slowly it began to move. The Musk team watched, jaws tight, eyes wide. The train accelerated smoothly, gliding down the tracks without a single drop of fuel. No overhead wires sparked, no battery packs drained. It moved as if powered by the future itself. The lead engineer muttered under his breath, "This changes everything." The team rode in silence for the first few minutes. Some scribbled furiously in notebooks. Others filmed discreetly with pocket devices. They watched the monitors showing energy levels, stable and infinite. They felt the motion, steady and precise, and they realized this was not a trick. It was real. Maxwell sat calmly, letting the moment sink in. He did not boast. He did not challenge them. He simply let the train speak for itself. One of the visitors finally broke the silence. How far can it go? Maxwell answered, "As far as the tracks will take it." There was no limit, no refueling point, no downtime. The RF system generated power continuously, an endless loop. The Musk team exchanged glances. For them, this was both terrifying and inspiring. They had spent years perfecting battery technology, charging networks, solar integration. But here was something that made all of that obsolete in an instant. If scaled, it could power cars, planes, even rockets. And that possibility shook them more than anything. The train picked up speed, gliding faster, smoother, without strain. Outside the window, Zimbabwe's night landscape blurred into streaks of light. It felt like science fiction come alive. For a moment, even the skeptics sat back, silent in awe. The ride lasted an hour, though it felt like minutes. When the train returned to the station, the air was electric with tension. The team stepped off, whispering urgently among themselves. Some wanted to know more, others wanted to run tests, but Maxwell remained calm. "This is just the beginning," he said. The visitors nodded, some reluctantly, some enthusiastically. They knew they had seen something the world was not ready for, and they also knew they could not ignore it. The secret visit would not remain secret for long. Rumors had already begun to leak. Airport staff, local drivers, even a few villagers along the railway had seen unusual activity. By dawn, whispers spread across social media. Elon Musk's people spotted in Zimbabwe. Tesla team seen near Chikumbutso's train. Speculation exploded. Was Musk planning to partner with Maxwell? Was he trying to buy the technology, or was he trying to stop it before it threatened Tesla's empire? The truth was more complicated. Inside private meetings, the Musk engineers debated furiously. Some argued it was a fraud that needed deeper investigation. Others admitted quietly that what they saw was undeniable. The arguments grew intense, but all agreed on one thing. If this train is real, the world will never be the same again. Meanwhile, Maxwell remained unfazed. For him, this was not about Silicon Valley approval. It was about Africa taking its rightful place in the story of innovation. He knew the visit would spark global headlines. He knew governments and corporations would soon come knocking. But he also knew the train was undeniable proof. It was running, alive, and ready to change the world. The Musk team left Zimbabwe as quietly as they arrived. No press conferences, no photos, no statements. But they left with more questions than answers, and perhaps with a hint of fear. Because for the first time, innovation had not come from America, Europe, or Asia. It had come from Africa, and it was unstoppable. The story leaked within days. News outlets ran headlines that shocked readers worldwide. Elon Musk's team secretly visits Africa's RF train. Tesla eyes Zimbabwean tech marvel. Maxwell Chikumbutso forces Silicon Valley to pay attention. The world was suddenly awake. Governments sent inquiries. Corporations sent scouts. Investors flooded Maxwell's office with calls. But Maxwell was not chasing money. He was chasing freedom. The freedom of a world unchained from fossil fuels and expensive batteries. The freedom of abundance, not scarcity. And for Africa, the freedom of finally leading, not following. The Musk team prepared the reports back in the U.S. Some recommended collaboration. Others recommended suppression. But deep down, they all knew one thing. The genie was out of the bottle. The RF train was real. And the world would never be the same again. Within days of the news breaking, the internet became a battlefield of opinions. Supporters of Maxwell hailed him as Africa's answer to Elon Musk. Skeptics claimed it was all smoke and mirrors, a staged show for publicity. But those who had been inside the train knew the truth. The technology was real, and it was terrifyingly disruptive. Corporations that thrived on fuel sales began calling emergency meetings. Petroleum giants feared a future where trains no longer needed diesel. Battery manufacturers feared irrelevance if infinite energy became accessible. Even governments were uneasy. Their economies depended on fuel taxes, energy monopolies, and infrastructure control. And here was one man in Zimbabwe unraveling all of it with a single train. In Washington, whispered reports reached policymakers. In Beijing, energy strategists demanded updates. In Europe, rail executives sat in stunned silence. How could they compete with a train that costs nothing to power? The media fanned the flames with dramatic coverage. Documentaries speculated on whether Africa had leapfrogged the world. Talk shows debated if Musk would partner with Maxwell or try to crush him. Some claimed the secret visit was already proof of panic. Others believed it was the start of a quiet collaboration, but Maxwell remained silent. He didn't chase headlines, didn't call press conferences. He simply kept the train running, and every day, more people came to witness it. Families traveled miles to see the miracle train. Students stood by the tracks, waving flags, hoping for a glimpse. Journalists camped outside Maxwell's facility, begging for interviews. But the man stayed focused on his mission. This was not about fame. It was about proving to the world that free energy was possible. Meanwhile, Musk's inner circle wrestled with difficult questions. Should Tesla invest? Should SpaceX explore RF energy for spacecraft? Or should they build defenses against a future where batteries were no longer central? Elon himself remained silent publicly, but privately, he studied the reports carefully. He admired innovation wherever it came from. But admiration was not the same as surrender. If Maxwell's technology was real, Musk would need to adapt quickly, because Tesla's empire was built on charging networks, not invisible waves. And that empire could collapse overnight. Conspiracy theories began swirling online. Some claimed Maxwell had already signed a secret deal with Musk. Others argued the U.S. government would seize the technology. Dark whispers even suggested energy giants would try to shut it down permanently. Maxwell, however, continued his work without fear. He invited local engineers to study the train. He shared insights with African universities. He wanted the knowledge to grow on African soil. For the first time, Africa was not just consuming technology, it was exporting it. And not just any technology. World-changing, future-defining innovation. The Musk engineers who had visited were still reeling. They had witnessed history but were bound by non-disclosure agreements. Still, in private conversations, their tone betrayed awe. One admitted to a colleague, "What we saw in Zimbabwe could rewrite physics textbooks." Another whispered, "It felt like standing inside the future." Yet, none of them dared to say it openly. The stakes were too high. If the world embraced Maxwell's vision, power itself, political, financial, industrial, would shift. For centuries, those who controlled energy controlled nations. But a train that generates its own energy gave that power back to the people, and that thought frightened more than it inspired. Back in Zimbabwe, the train's second public run was scheduled. This time, hundreds of passengers were invited aboard. Journalists, government officials, foreign observers, and ordinary citizens. The train filled quickly, and anticipation hung in the air. As it glided away from the station, cameras captured every detail. Children pressed their faces to the glass, wide-eyed at the futuristic ride. Reporters streamed live coverage, narrating with disbelief. The train accelerated across fields and hills, powered only by invisible frequencies. Onboard screens displayed real-time energy flow, steady and endless. There was no trick. No hidden fuel tanks, no charging ports, just the hum of progress. The passengers erupted in applause. And with that journey, doubt began to vanish. The world could no longer claim it was a hoax. The RF train was real, and it worked flawlessly. By evening, global headlines screamed in bold letters, "Africa leads the future of transport. Chikumbutso's train outpaces the world." Elon Musk's team saw it first. For Maxwell, it was validation. For Africa, it was pride. For industries built on fossil fuels, it was a nightmare. And for Musk, it was a challenge. The whispers inside Tesla grew louder. Some engineers begged Musk to initiate collaboration. Others pushed for acquisition, warning that delay would mean defeat. But there were also darker voices, those who argued the world wasn't ready for free energy, that unleashing it would destabilize economies, that it had to be contained. Yet the people who had ridden the train couldn't be silenced. They shared videos, testimonies, and images across the internet. Millions watched and shared them, sparking debates in every corner of the globe. Students demanded universities teach RF technology. Activists rallied for governments to support free energy. Communities in developing countries prayed they would soon see such trains. Hope spread like wildfire. And once hope spreads, it cannot be stopped. Elon Musk himself finally broke his silence with a cryptic tweet. It read, "Innovation can come from anywhere. Pay attention to Zimbabwe." The world went into frenzy. Was this an endorsement? Was it a warning? Or was it Musk's subtle way of acknowledging Maxwell's brilliance? Speculation exploded once again. Some believed Musk was preparing a partnership. Others thought he was signaling a race had begun. Either way, one thing was certain. Africa was no longer on the sidelines of innovation. It was at the center of it. The secret visit had turned into global recognition. Maxwell, once doubted and dismissed, now stood shoulder to shoulder with the greatest innovators of our time. But unlike others, he carried not the weight of profit, but the vision of freedom. And his train, silent, infinite, unstoppable, carried that vision into reality. The story does not end here. It is only the beginning. Because once the world sees that a train can run forever on free energy, the imagination opens to bigger questions. What about buses? What about planes? What about entire cities powered the same way? The Musk team may have come to Zimbabwe in secrecy, but they left with the truth they could never unsee. The future of energy had already begun, and it began not in Silicon Valley, not in Beijing, not in Berlin, but in Africa, in Zimbabwe, with one man's vision and one train that defied the impossible.